I'm so excited that you've chosen to join in to this weekday journey that we have going along with this series and More Than Words, where we're looking at the Lord's Prayer. And yesterday, as we talked about just the first two words, our Father, and seeing God as our Father, as close, as intimate, as caring, as a God who is with us, I left you with this question to ask each day this week: what might God be up to in my life today? And I encourage you just to be curious with that. And the reality is, even if we don't get an answer to it, it still frames our mind in the correct way. We see God as Father. We see Him as being active in our lives. So as we come to day one of this journey and Monday of this week, as we ask this question for the first time, I want to give you a couple of handles that have helped me the last few years on this, made it a little more practical for me. When you ask the question, what might God be up to in your life today, in my life today, look for things that fit into two categories. Look for things that are specific and look for things that are personal. Specific and personal. I made this chart. I don't know if this will be helpful to use. Things like this kind of help me. A visual typically helps me see it. But there's things that in our lives that are non-specific, meaning the event that's happening is not specific. It's a very large group of people that are experiencing this. The more specific it gets, the smaller the group of people that are experiencing it. The most specific event would be just experienced by one person. So that's what's happening. Personal and impersonal deals with the meaning behind it. Is there personal meaning for it? So something can be non-specific and also impersonal. That's kind of like the sun shining every day. It's non-specific, it shines on everyone. And for most of us, it's impersonal. We just kind of go throughout our days and we don't even think about it. But something can also be non-specific and very personal. If you have just read a book about the solar system and you've just read specifically about the sun, when the sun comes out and starts shining, it may be personal to you because you know all these different facts about what's going on in that moment as the sun shines on the earth. And what I want you to think about as we ask this question, what might God be up to in my life today, is to think through things and look for things that are both personal and specific. Specific in the sense of there's a small group of people or a limited group of people that are experiencing this, or maybe even it's just you who's seeing this thing or hearing this thing or experiencing this thing, and that it's also personal, that there's personal meaning for you in this. Specific and personal. We see this play out in John chapter 1. I talked about this at Night of Worship a few weeks ago when Nathaniel and Philip have this interaction. Philip says, hey, you got to come see Jesus. And he's doubting. He doesn't think anything good can come from Nazareth. And then as he approaches Jesus, Jesus makes this comment to him. And Nathaniel's like, how do you know me? And he says, I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you. And Nathaniel's blown away and he ends up putting his trust in Jesus and says, you're the Messiah. You're the Son of God. And the reason is because of a very specific and very personal event in Nathaniel's life. We don't know exactly what was going on underneath the fig tree, but we know it was specific because it was Nathaniel that was sitting under the fig tree, and there was something personally going on there, if I had to guess, something of deep personal meaning, that when Jesus tapped into that, it was both specific and personal for Nathaniel, and his faith blew up. And I know for me, I was first introduced to this idea through something that happened a couple years ago. I was sitting in a coffee shop and had some space in between meetings, so it kind of gave me a few moments to take a breath and just pray and think a little bit, and didn't realize it until I paused, but I was experiencing some negative emotion, and I wasn't sure where it was from. But earlier in the day, I realized as I was sitting there processing, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and he told me about these conferences he was being invited to speak at. And I was not invited to speak at these conferences. And so I began to carry this negative emotion without even really knowing it until I paused in the afternoon. And what I was experiencing was jealousy and FOMO. I wanted to be speaking at these conferences. And so as I began to observe that and see that, I began to pray and just ask God to help me with it. And as I did, I was looking out the window of this coffee shop, and a crew of window cleaners began to clean the windows of the coffee shop. Now, that would be a pretty specific event for the people inside the coffee shop, probably 10 or 15 people at most. But to most of the people in the coffee shop, that was a very impersonal thing. They saw the cleaners and maybe didn't even see them. They maybe just ignored them and went on with their day. But for me, it was very, very personal. It was not only specific, it was very personal. I don't have time to tell you the whole story now, but about a decade before, I was in sales, and it was before I was in pastoral work, and I was just having a really tough time, and I was processing with a friend, and I just kind of extroverted the idea to him. Maybe I'll start a window washing business. And it went no further than that comment right there. But through the years, as I came on staff at North Point and spent a few years there and being a part of what God was doing in that community, and then the last 6 or 7 years at Brownsbridge, being a part of what God's doing here, my friend will occasionally remind me when we're a part of something really cool, seeing God do something that's really unique, he'll remind me, hey, you could be washing windows right now. And there's nothing wrong with washing windows. But for me, that just became this code name for the faithfulness of God. It's been a way to remember his faithfulness. So as I'm sitting in that coffee shop, looking out the window, and all of a sudden it dawns on me, oh my goodness, there is a crew of folks cleaning these windows. It just hit me in a powerful way. And in that moment, I felt like God was saying to me, Adam, I've got you. You can trust me. And if I want you speaking at a conference, I'll have you speaking at a conference. And if I want you to do something else, I'll have you doing something else. But just trust me. Don't you remember through the years all those moments that I've been faithful? And in that moment, my faith grew. My experience of God grew. And on that day, that was what God was up to in my life. And it was very specific, and it was very personal to me. Now, does it happen all the time since then? No. Does it happen every week, even every month? No. But I want to encourage you today as we start this journey to pay attention to what might be going on specifically and personally for you. And as a result, you'll experience more of our Father in heaven. What might he be up to in your life today? Ask that question. Be curious about it. Pay attention. We'll see you tomorrow.